Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have vowed to take away your... Joe Biden...
What the hell happened there?
Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have vowed to take away your Second Amendment rights through gun bans, gun confiscation, and government regulations. Now, Joe Biden is no longer hiding his real intentions, and we need you to take action now.
Whether it's a 9mm pistol or whether it's a rifle is ridiculous. I'm continuing to push to eliminate the sale of those things. But
the Biden administration is coming after your right to own any gun. Joe Biden has already issued executive orders.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Weekly Bullet. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, three good friends and common contributors. To my right, Mike Piwowarsi of The Rundown and of Arms Room Radio. Below me, Rob Morse of Self-Defense Gun Stories, also of the Slow Facts blog. And down in the corner there, Alex Ooley of the Ooley Law Offices and frequent contributor every Friday, as a matter of fact, to the Daily Bullet. Got a lot to get to this week, gentlemen. We've had quite the list of things going on this week. Leading the charge, starting, I think it is tomorrow, the new governor gets signed in, and gets sworn in Virginia. New legislature comes in, and now that Northam's going to be gone, all kinds of pro-gun bills are coming in, are being considered. Mike, you and I talked about this a little bit on Thursday on the Daily Bullet, but looks like a lot of the anti-gun stuff that went through last year is on its way out.
Yeah, listen, a whole slew of things that we watched them put in, right? Everything from the enhanced background checks, the extended periods, the exclusionary zones, the additional gun-free zones that they put in. And Paul, I think you and I took note of all the things that were put forth and come forward under the last governor. All of these anti-gun agenda nonsense. The one thing that they don't, at least they didn't mention it of, and I did look after you and I spoke about it, Paul, I don't see anything about rolling back the red flag laws. So that's my question here. Listen, great. We're taking back 90% of what they took from us. What about that red flag law, though?
Mm-hmm.
Magazine bans?
Did they push those through?
The assault weapon ban and the magazine ban did not go through. And I believe we gave credit to Phil Van Cleve and the VCDL on that when we spoke about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mike, I know you are a huge advocate to get conservatives to vote. I'm noticing here that there are some of these bills, there are a lot of things you and I would like to see Republicans do. Permitless carry. Or, okay, we can take it in baby steps. Lifetime permit, no fee. Okay, that'd be steps on. Do we have to throw Republicans out of office so that they remember that the Second Amendment is there?
And I think I'm willing perhaps to give them this first 2 years, right? Because basically what we've done is thrown all of the Democrats out of office to put the Republicans in, and it sounds like they already have the agenda to try and get back everything. And that was part of the conversation that Paul and I had on the Daily was, how far do we think this goes? Do we think, and how long does it take? How long and how quick do we get permitless carry or Constitution carry or lifetime carry? Do they go that far? Do they not only take back what we lost, but duplicate the efforts towards pro-gun? And I think they do. I think that's what we're going to see there. I think within that first year, at the end of the first year of this 2-year term coming up, that we'll see, make them one of the constitutional carry or permitless carry states.
From your lips to Republican legislators' ears.
Yeah, and if we don't, listen, we know the people of Virginia will vote them out and try again.
One would hope so, at least, right?
Right.
With enough Bloomberg money, that'll happen. Yes, sir.
Yeah. That's the threat this year, right? That's our biggest threat.
Well, now to be fair, part of this was just ham-handed arrogance when politicians said, I know your parents, I know you're involved with your schools, leave all that to us. In fact, we'll dictate curricula and what happens in schools. You stay out of it. there are other interest groups at play, like everyone with kids or grandchildren who said, I'm not ready to give you my children for you to raise.
I think, and we said this, I think that one statement alone lost them both houses and lost them the governor's mansion.
Yep. Okay.
Well, I want to get a comment in here real quick. Philip over on the Facebook side, and this is right up your alley, Mike. Let me get this one up here. Philip wants to know, will Florida pass open carry? Forget about constitutional carry. Do you have to? Will you be able to open carry your gun in Florida? What do you think, Mike?
Again, the hurdle here is not the governor. The governor is ready to pass all of this. At play here is the Senate leadership and the way our Senate is set up. If the chairman does not bring it to the floor for discussion and to the floor for a vote, it has no opportunity to go. We're still waiting to see if there's anything on the agenda of our current Senate president. We've had it surprise one of the last two times in Florida. If it gets to a full floor vote, does it pass? Yes, it does. But I think it's a closer vote than a constitutional carry vote. I think people of Florida, and especially the politicians here in Florida, would sooner pass a constitutional carry or a permitless carry, whatever you want to call it, than they would an open carry. You got to remember, Florida's one of those 4 states left that hasn't had open carry, and forever and ever and ever, it's been brainwashed into the minds of people here in Florida that if you see a gun, it's a bad gun. So that's a big hurdle to get over here. But I think it does go if it makes it to the floor.
And Mike, what's your perception about in Florida? Like, during the pandemic, there's been a huge exodus of people from the East Coast to Florida, right? And how much has that exodus affected the politics down there? And is that yet to be determined, or do you have a sense for that?
When after Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, and we got up to 500,000 people that came from Puerto Rico, and that we were worried that was going to completely turn us into a blue state, rather, because we were hovering at purple at that point. And then as we found out in the last election with Governor DeSantis, and even what we saw when Trump did not win re-election, was that we've become a solid red state again. And I think a lot of that has to do with people underestimated how the people of the former residents of Puerto Rico, now residents of Florida, wanted to vote, because they fled here to get away from the failed leadership in Puerto Rico. And I think we're going to see a lot of that having come from the Northeast, where I know everybody sits in those blue seats up there in New York and in Massachusetts and everywhere else. But I think they're finally realizing, I'm leaving the city in New York because it's a 51% effective tax rate and I can't afford to live here anymore. I'm going to go somewhere new. And I think I might try voting new. And again, I think we saw that here recently with the people of Puerto Rico. And I think the people from the Northeast may do the same. They may realize they like what they have here. Rather than change it, let's at least vote status quo for a while.
Yeah, I have the same hope, because a lot of people, you hear about Texas a lot, not wanting Texas to turn into California with all the Californians moving there. And I hope it's the same for Florida, that a lot of those folks remember why they left the state that they left and went to Florida.
Tennessee and Idaho.
Yeah, and I think in the past, at least here in Florida, if people came here for the family was here and the relatives were here, and it was always the place you just retired to. It really has only become in the last couple of years the place you go to escape, the politics and finances of somewhere else, as opposed to just the place to retire to.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get, because we got I want to get some other stories, because we've got a lot of stories to cover this week. Got 2 stories here, one from Tech Explorer, one from WJACTV.com, that smart guns are trying to make a comeback. They've got 2 companies that are introducing smart guns, and I refuse to call them smart guns myself, because the smart with my gun is right here. I know when it's safe to press the trigger and when the trigger must be pressed and when it cannot be pressed. I know how to store my gun so that nobody will press the trigger. I know how to keep my gun in condition when it's not being used, so if the trigger is inadvertently pressed, nothing bad will happen.
So, Paul, a so-called smart gun is a firearm that can tell if a registered owner has it in his hand. By the way, only one hand, typically, not both. So, if for whatever reason you have to switch hands, you now have a brick in your hand. And my question, of course, is who believes it? Do the lawmakers even believe it? Do the police believe it? Will the police then go to a non-retention holder, a retention holster? Because after all, I've got the magic ring on my finger. Who cares if someone grabs my gun because it's just a brick because I've got the ring? Do they believe it?
How close does that ring have to be? I mean, are we talking contact, or are we talking a foot or 2 foot? Because if I grab that gun and put it against your chest, and you're trying with that gun, with that hand that's got the ring on it, to pull my hand away, guess what?
Will it fire? A similar comment. Now that this gun's inert, are they going to repeal safe storage laws? And since it's inert, I could, of course, give it to anybody because it's not a gun.
The whole thing is just... Tom and I talked about this week. There is a small segment of the population that will go for this, and God bless them. I don't think these things should be banned. I don't think they're the smartest weapon in the world to own, simply because unless they're 100% effective, every time I pick it up without fail and I press the trigger, it goes bang. If I'm washing dishes and all of a sudden somebody comes in the house and I've got to draw and fire right now, and it works when my hand is wet, because guess what? If something's going wrong, my palms are going to become sweaty really fast. If it works with wet hands, if it works with bloody hands, if it works every time, all the time.
Does it work with gloves?
Yeah. Does it work? Do I have to strip my glove off? Yeah.
I think, guys, that we all know the answer to it. It doesn't. I've got a $1,000 phone right here that's guaranteed to be the end all for the future. And if my finger's sweaty, it's not going to work. Half the times when I ask it to do something, it's going to do something the opposite. Paul, you got a $500,000 computer system there at the Second Amendment Foundation headquarters, and we started off with a blip with the wrong video running, and we don't know why. It's the same thing with this. I
can tell you why. It's because this guy right here, this guy misprogrammed it.
Hey, I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt here. All right. They're not going to work. There's no way these are going to work. They're not going to stand up to it. And to answer your first question, the only ones that believe in them are politicians, because they've been sold a bill of goods and believe it's the end all to all their problems. It's like the gun-free zone sign. It'll solve the problems for them. I don't think we have to worry about these because dealers will not buy them. Dealers don't want them in their shop. They don't want them anywhere around. They won't sell them. I could tell you. Let me give you an example. Remember the movie World War Z? Remember that with the zombies and Brad Pitt? And you remember
the zombies that moved quickly? Yeah, I remember that.
Right. Remember the zombies moved around the unhealthy? They'd have somebody with a terminal disease, and they would just swarm. The swarm would divide like the water around them. You remember that? Well, that's what the stand looks like. It's the SHOT Show where the smart guns are. You've got 60,000 people moving through the audience, and when they get to the smart gun table, they just pass it right by. They're like, what's that crap doing here?
Well, my concern, too, is like, even if you could make them 100% reliable so that they would work every time you picked them up, I'm not convinced that we would want them even then, because, I don't know, I think that it almost creates a de facto registration system to some extent, because every gun is registered to its owner, and I think that is a dream come true for politicians, for gun control advocates. So,
that's a great point.
They may only cost a couple $100 more, but for $100, I bet I can jam your RFID gun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And by the way, given that drug lords build their own submarines, you're telling me they can't get a guy to gin up a couple of parts to generate a RFID jammer? I don't believe you.
Yep.
I want to get this one up here. Over on the YouTube side, MKJO, I don't know how to pronounce that. Would these smart guns pass military trials? Well, my understanding is they're in trial with one police department, although they will not say what police department, but one police department does have them in trials. I've got a suspicion that it's probably the West Podunk, West Virginia police department that's got 3 deputies on duty, and the one that rides a desk is the one that's trying out the gun.
I would think Santa Monica, but anyway.
Okay. And one more real quick that if I am, from time to time, I will carry 2 firearms. One a regular carry and one under deep concealment. And if I am in a position somewhere, let's say Rob and I are together, and all of a sudden stuff starts going really bad south, I'll give my regular gun to, say, Rob, and I go for the deep conceal gun. All of a sudden, we're both armed, and we can work as a team. I can't do that with a smart gun. I can't give it to Rob because only I can use it if I happen to have 2 smart guns on me. Out of luck.
Or Susan, more likely, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Isn't that part of their plan, to keep you from passing a firearm to somebody else? They want to restrict the number of people that have them. We already have that with a number of the laws where, we have in Washington State, right, where I can't pass the firearm to you because you're not a relative and we haven't done a background check.
Yeah, but I know Rob's a good guy. I don't know if I could pass it to you, but I know Rob's a good guy. So.
It again accomplishes their goal of keeping us from handing firearms amongst ourselves.
Yeah. On to the NRA?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Go ahead, Rob.
This story is the NRA was instrumental in a lawsuit brought in California. California legislators said, oh, yeah, you have to give us all kinds of information to get a firearm, even to get ammunition in California. We want to share your personal information with some so-called Second Amendment scholars. Now, by the way, they will be our Second Amendment scholars. They won't share them if I wanted to get the data or if someone from out of state. So these are their hand-picked propaganda ministers. And the NRA said, wait, whoa, hold on. That's personal data. Think of HIPAA, the Healthcare Personal Protection Act, so that data can't become broadly known. Now, here's something I looked up. Politicians and judges are written to the law so that and law enforcement, the latter I could understand why, they will not have their personal information released. Why can my personal information be released, but not the guy I elected to office?
Yeah, and what's really, I'm glad the NRA is finally doing something productive. It's been since the ACMAC divorce and the whole thing started, they've been stuck in neutral trying to deal with their internal problems. They've been really dealing with internal issues and not doing a whole lot of anything else. I'm glad they're finally moving forward on at least some fronts.
Wayne's lawyer said that the NRA could have some money for other uses.
Yeah. What really concerns me about this, though, is the UC Davis researchers get this, but there's nothing in that law that says what UC Davis does with the data after they get it. If UC Davis wants to give that money or give that data to, like, say, Bloomberg Group, there's nothing that says they can't.
Well, here's the reason. I'm sorry, Mike.
I think that was part of the problem here. It wasn't that they were giving it to UC Davis, which is technically a state agency, right? It's that UC Davis and their independent researchers could give it then to whoever they wanted to, whether it be, every town or, Mad Mothers Against Everything, whatever it is. It could have ended up anywhere with that information. And, Rob, just to touch on what you said there a moment ago with the protected information, absolutely. I believe, it's been proven over and over, and it was in the Gun Control Act of 68 and 86 reaffirmed that our information, there shall be no database, just like Alex we talked about a few minutes ago. There's no database, no registration for us, but we know what 27 states have ignored that so far. They have one with their own independent databases, but for those of us that remain free, we value it. The law enforcement, I do believe that their addresses should be protected, because then you start getting into their families, right? And I don't want you bothering the families of those that protect us by intimidating them into doing maybe not protecting, so I don't want that to happen. Politicians, though, on the other hand, and we ran into this with the mayor in Seattle, I think, when they had protests up there, and she complained. Yeah. If you're an elected politician, your address should be public record. I should be able to protest you either at your home, at your office, or at the Capitol. Now I'm going to stand on the sidewalk and hold my protest sign and be peaceful about it, but I should be able to protest you 24/7 wherever you are.
One of the reasons I would like this info, Mike and Alec, I think that we can show politicians have been wildly discriminatory in who gets permits. In fact, who is even allowed to own guns in California. So if I get data by ethnic group, by race, by county, I can hang civil rights discrimination lawsuits. So I'm pretty sure that's why they won't let me see that data.
Make a good point.
Interesting, yeah.
Get a couple of comments in here. Jim, going back to the smart guns, says, smart guns are the stupidest thing I can think of. Man, I'm right there with you, man. Smeggy says, I'll give my data to John Lott. That guy's a rock star. Amen.
Yes, indeed.
He absolutely is. And Smeggy has two more comments I'm going to get to. First one, he says, Mom demand action from illegal mayors. Yeah, and it's been a while since we talked about that, this Mayors Against Illegal Guns. Rob, when you first came on the Polite Society podcast, we were talking about this for a little bit, back when they were mayors against illegal guns. It turns out that quite a few of them had to resign from the organization because they kept getting brought up on charges.
Yes.
And then Smeggy also wants to know, are any of you guys going to shot? If so, what do you think the atmosphere for the 2A will be? Well, of the people you see on camera, exactly one of us is, and that's going to be Mike. So, Mike, what do you think the atmosphere for 2A will be?
SHOT's always two different events rolled into one, right? It's the firearms industry, firearms manufacturers, dealers, distributors that are there showing off their new product. And God bless those guys. They keep us all in business. But they're there to for the almighty dollar, and they do it rather well. The Second Amendment community will also be there, and we obviously are pretty good with firearms ourselves. And it's always the two crowds come together rather well. What we have to watch out for, just to give you an example, is we've seen this in a couple of states here recently where we've had constitutional carry come up, and some dealers will come up and say things to the news like, well, I don't think we should have this. I think we should have training. I think it should be mandatory. And we know what they mean in their heart, that they want people to be safe, but they're not thinking about the Second Amendment when they're thinking about the safety. And they have to find that balance, and a lot of them just never had to before. So it's not that they're anti-2A by any means. It's just they've never been asked to stand on the Second Amendment side of the fence. They've always been standing on the the business side of the fence. So it's a good mix. There's never, I'll tell you this, never been an issue. Nobody's ever gotten in a fight over pro-gun use and Second Amendment. Those supporters there. If anything, it's been a quick conversation on, hey, you may want to watch how you say this because you might lose a customer or two. And as soon as they realize that, they walk those comments back. But I think it's going to be a great show for Second Amendment. I've heard from hundreds of people already that are going to be there, and they'll be coming over to see us and join the rest of our Second Amendment tribe while we're there.
One thing, demanding mommies always go to the NRA show every year with 20 or 30 of their people, and they protest. And there could be 20, 30,000 people are attending the NRA show of the public. And they'll show up with 20, and I'm not exaggerating, they'll show up with 20 people in their red Moms Demand Action t-shirts, and they'll do some camera tricks and make it look like there's maybe 100 or so. But they don't show up at SHOT because there's 50,000 people at SHOT.
Yeah, on a slow day. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you remember Bob Owens would find some place to back up far enough away that there's this huge convention center, and there's this little fenced-in area where the demanding moms would be, and you go, oh, that's what it really looked like. That was dedication. Thank you. So my honesty and journalism award perpetually goes to Robert for having done that.
We would. I did it at NRA and did it at a couple of the Carry Guard expos, then the USCCA expos. Seemed like they were every time we ran into them, they were in the South too. It was always in one of the Texas events, and then we ran into them at NRA Atlanta. We went over and took pictures with them and tried to have nice conversations with them. And they, even just reading their signs, I'd asked them to explain what their sign meant, and they couldn't even do that. I'm like, you're not even part of this group, are you? You just got paid $20 to stand here, didn't you? And that's really what it came to. Even the protesters they had there weren't protesters. They were somebody that got a little payout from every town via Bloomberg.
And a free T-shirt out of the deal. Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I remember in Indianapolis. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
That's right.
No, I was going to lead us off down a rabbit hole.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say I remember a few years ago in Indianapolis when the NRA annual meeting was there, the moms group was there with 20 to 30 people, and they were looking for a spot among the sea of gun owners to look like they had a lot of people, and they had to find some obscure spot like in the near the loading docks to look like they had a lot of people. It was pretty interesting to see the lengths that they went to try to find an empty space. But it was, I don't think they were fooling too many people, at least that attended. That's for sure.
Mike, I would say there's a third world at SHOT, and I was amazed to see it. These are guys who build products on an industrial scale. Somebody said, oh yeah, car manufacturing is down. We bend a lot of sheet metal. We can make magazines. And I went, oh yeah. He goes, yeah, you need 10,000 next week? Whoa, okay. A guy talked to me about metal finishing chemicals. Yes. And he goes, yeah, I can deliver this, by the railroad car load. So you that want a little vial of something to fix a scratch on your gun, this is a different environment. These are guys who are into quantity.
Yes, absolutely. And there's definitely, again, a pro-business side. They're the bottom floor, the machinists that are there. Just absolutely amazing what they can do and what they can deliver for you.
And get a comment in here real quick. You guys might recognize this commenter. Susan Lathrop says, I want to see Gail Pepp and Troll Moms in person again. That was, I think that was when they were in Atlanta that Gail did that. It was her, and I want to say Weird Beard was in on that, and who else was in on that? They actually went down to the Moms Demand protest and mingled amongst them and got a bunch of pictures. Let me see here. Pete over at Gun Website says, we filmed the Moms Demand drive-by photo opportunities at NRA. Literally 5 to 20 minutes, they are in and out. They claim their goal is to avoid confrontation. Yeah, okay. Let me get. Yeah, we're good there. So let's see what do we got next on the rundown for the week.
FSU.
Okay.
I read this article, and it's kind of okay. They took the press release from a bunch of Democrats and said, "Oh, it's hard to be a Democrat legislator in Florida. Woe is me. We want to pass more gun control. They won't let us. We're not taking anyone's guns, just requiring you to do the responsible thing." Yeah, no. The latest talking point seems to be homemade firearms. And I again submit that most criminals don't worry about homemade firearms. They can steal all they want. They can import all they want. If they do homemade firearms at all, it's because it's fun and they have money and they're having fun with their money. Mm-hmm. By restricting homemade firearms, we're not restricting the guns that criminals can have. Paul, we talked about it, I think, right as we opened. Mexico lost a third of their firearms, or Mexican military lost a third of their firearms. We had 300,000 firearms reported stolen in the United States per year, 13,000 of them from FFLs. Now, that could be some guy driving a truck through the front of the store. That could also be somebody robbing the UPS delivery driver as materials are moving to and from. So, guns are everywhere in our culture. Criminals do not have a hard time getting firearms. Putting more ink on paper won't solve that.
Just one more law.
Yeah, absolutely. And this we're going to take up some time on this next one because the article itself is actually hidden behind a paywall, and I didn't pay to get to the article. But the title of the article is "Another Civil War Seems Unlikely Until It Isn't." And this is just one of a series of articles I've heard of and see, and most of them are behind paywalls, honestly. It's another instance of liberals in the media, I believe, trying to goad the extreme right wing into going to war. They look at the ABC, CBS, CNN, all of them, they live by ratings, and that is something that is something designed to get people to pay for that content. And do I think there's an honest chance of there being a shooting war in the United States in the next 10 years? Not really. I don't. I don't think any of us here do.
Paul, I think be careful there, because we have seen government officials who get frustrated that they can't do things that are pretty much illegal, and they go, those armed folks over there, they're the problem. And we're going, wait, what? Hold on. We're happy to talk. You just can't ram something down our throat that's illegal. So I think guns keep people talking, particularly politicians who have, sorry, Mike, some malleable law enforcement on their side, and they can pass a law that violates rights left and right. So
now,
I think a
politician and law enforcement are not the same. Remember, law enforcement, right? Those patrol, the guys and girls on the ground are not the politicians and law enforcement. And those are the same ones. Let me remind you of this, Rob. When 10,000 people showed up with no guns and decided they wanted to maybe explore changing the government, no firearms were used, and law enforcement stepped out of the way and said, welcome to the building.
Right. Yep.
Yep.
With an exception, but
Yeah.
Well, I mean, find me another example then.
no. Oh no, I'm conceding that point to you.
Okay.
And
I don't think we need an armed insurrection. I honestly think if we want this, if the government goes rogue and we get tyranny, we get absolute tyranny that's going on for a long time, the kind of stuff that was described in the Declaration of Independence. Just knowing that we have the ownership of the guns is enough. We're not going to have to go and have the bloodshed. You can have 10 to 20,000 people decide this building's ours now. Yeah, we're taking the seat of government from you, and that's been proven here recently.
that's why I really hate that they call January 6th an insurrection. If it were an insurrection, by golly, it wouldn't have went the way it did.
If it was an insurrection, none of them would be in office right now.
Go ahead, Rob.
Mike, you've marched in formation, haven't you?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I have too. I've been with groups of people where they told us to break stride. If 10,000 people enter the calendar and do so much as drop on their heels, they'll knock down that building. So the fact that they didn't means they didn't want to.
Exactly right. It was. I believe the same as what we saw in Virginia when the VCDL and all the other citizens down there in Virginia showed up at the Capitol steps with a guillotine. It was a message. It was a message that we're still here and we're not going to let you take everything from us.
Let me get some comments in here real quick. Warsaw Patriot says this generation has no idea how free we are. Just take a look at Europe, for heaven's sake, which is moderately free, to see how free we are here in the United States. Absolutely. Or New Jersey. I mean, for heaven's sake.
Or Australia, or New Zealand. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean we can take it for granted. That's for sure.
Right.
Warsaw Patriot, if there was an armed conflict in the USA, it would be the end of our country. It would be like the Yugoslavian conflict back in the 80s times 7.
Right.
He goes on. There's going to be several comments on the end of this.
The
Tribal
problem with
warfare.
Yugoslavia was that 17 different countries claimed credit to it. That's a completely different, a bad analogy compared to the United States.
Yeah. And he's tribal warfare, gangs, police, etc. And it's not good.
Because there were 17 different tribal communities that claimed it was ethnically theirs because it was a piece of land that we carved out at the end of World War I and said, this is what's left to make it a country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it happens. My wife was there talking about why you needed to limit government, because if government got very powerful, it would start handing out favors. And with competing interests, it became a winner-take-all situation. Very much like what the United States experienced just before the Civil War. And once you break that bond of trust, where we go, if you're in office, we're not going to believe the government anymore because we don't trust our fellow citizens to govern responsibly, you've got a powder keg on your hand, and that is the tendency that drives politicians toward the middle, whereas lately we've seen, and I see this particularly on the Democrat side, them going more and more to play to the extreme wing of their base.
All right.
And one point about this article, to the one behind the paywall, the title, another civil war sounds far-fetched until it isn't. I think that maybe to some extent that the intention there is to sort of enrage the right-wing gun owners, but I think more so I see it as a way to put fear in the folks on the left, to coalesce behind taking our rights away.
Right.
And it's like, hey, listen, if we don't take their rights away now, they could start a civil war with us later that we don't want. So I think it's more so that than it is, putting anger or sort of provoking gun owners.
Yeah, good point.
And I want to say this about civil wars. I've never been in the military. I've never served abroad, obviously having never been in the military. I know several people, and I've had contact with several people who have. To a person, anybody that's served in a war zone, to a person, everybody I've talked to that's served in a war zone relates that it's an absolutely horrific experience. And that's something I don't want here. I will do everything in my power to make sure that doesn't happen here. I have, in public, not very long ago, within this past year, I got into a very verbal argument with a young man who was trying to state to me that it was time for a revolution. And I called him in public very loudly a total blooming idiot. And it was time for him to go back to his grandma's house, go in the basement, and go home and go to bed. And I lost I lost a friend because of that. Not this person, but a friend of this person who happened to be a friend of mine. But it's not that time. Could there be a time when there's a shooting war? Yes, but it's not here. It's not now. So that's kind of where I wanted to go with that.
Paul, let's tease the heart of this article, Alec, particularly in light of what you said. We have had government agents kill Americans. There were protests after World War I. There were certainly Wounded Knee. There are other examples. And I thought that an armed citizenry prevented that because politicians thought that using force was a bad idea. If they can have the opinion, if situations change, where they go, oh, we control the media, we can kind of do whatever we want because we'll reframe the conflict and blame someone else. To me, that increases the probability of violence. Someone tell me I'm wrong, because
yeah, except I would just say that the government control over the media is overstated, right? Maybe the mainstream media, but not media as a whole, because we have so many ways to communicate. And I think the narrative, you can see it to some extent in lots of ways, how the government narrative falls apart. And I think that, people have more ways to access to truth now than ever. There's lots of social media suppression, through Facebook and Google and various other tech giants, but there are still many ways to communicate. And so I think the government's control over media as a whole is overstated to some extent.
Okay, good. Yeah, and you're absolutely right that guns are not sufficient to keep us free. An informed, independent media is essential. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Next one comes from Bearing Arms, our buddy Tom Knighton. And this one's right in your area, Alex. And Indiana state leaders send constitutional carry bill back to kill committee, same as last year. This one, let me go ahead and pull that, because that was one Rob put in the show notes. I haven't actually read this one yet.
Yeah,
Alex,
so there was actually.
Yeah, go for it, man. This is your backyard.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So there was actually some news yesterday. So last year, constitutional carry passed out of the House in Indiana overwhelmingly, and then had enough co-sponsors in the Senate to pass if all the co-sponsors voted for it. But it never got a hearing, never got a vote, and was killed behind closed doors. So at least one, if not more, of the co-sponsors publicly supported it, but didn't actually support it behind closed doors, and killed it so that they wouldn't have to vote publicly in its favor. This year, there's some concern that that could happen again. A bill passed out of the House, again, overwhelmingly, and it's now in the Senate. We don't know for sure which committee it will be assigned to in the Senate and whether or not it will get a hearing. But the good news is that the chairman in the Senate who did not give it a hearing last year has proposed her own constitutional carry bill this year. So that's a good sign. And in fact, she has announced that she is going to give her bill a hearing in the Senate. The problem with her bill is that it only applies to people who are 21 years or older. So if you're between 18 and 21, you would still have to get a license to carry a handgun under her bill, which is why we prefer the bill that came out of the House, because it applies to folks who are 18 or older, not just 21 or older. So even though she's going to give her bill a hearing, it doesn't mean it can't be modified. I hope that enough people, like we were talking about earlier with Mike, enough people reach out to their representatives and hold their feet to the fire and hold them accountable and let them know that we expect this right not to apply just to people who are 21 or older, but to all adults, all who aren't felons or suffer from a mental illness or who are otherwise unqualified or prohibited. So I think it will pass in some form in Indiana this year. I'm very optimistic. I just hope it's the bill that came out of the House rather than the bill that originated in the Senate.
Yeah, you take it, right? If that's what you get, we'd love to have 100%. And I'm an absolutist, like all of us here. I want 100% of my gun rights. I want what's guaranteed to me in the Second Amendment. That's what I want. But as I try to get back what's been taken from me over the years, I'll take 10% because I'll get 10% next year and 10% next year, and I'll build towards the 100. I'm not going to sit there with my thumb up my butt saying I'm only taking 100, and I end up with nothing because nobody wants to hear the compromise word. Now, remember, the compromise word is a bad word depending on how you use it. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to compromise with the left when they say, listen, I only want to take half your guns this year and half next year. That's a compromise for them. There is no compromise on our side. We'll be taking back up to and including 100% of our gun rights. That's the compromise. My compromise is I might take some now and then take some more back next year. How's that for compromise with you?
I'll compromise with repealing the 1968 Gun Control Act, and we'll work on the 1934 Firearms Act next year.
Right.
Thank you, Paul.
Perfect.
Well, I heard this great phrase where he goes, I never compromise on my goals or my principles. We can compromise on the methods to get there all day long.
There you go.
And
thank you, sir.
If this committee chairman will put her bill forward, let's get it out of committee, get it on the floor. We'll see what amendments can stick.
Yep.
Exactly. Yep. So I'm optimistic. And like you said, any movement in that direction is good movement.
All right. If I want to, and guys, I just found this just before we went to air. This didn't make it to show notes. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this one up so the viewers can see it. This is off the View from the Porch blog. This is Tamara Keel. She found this idiot firearms quote. Some poor kid in Italy had a fatal firearms accident while on a hunting trip, the nature which is hard to figure out from the information at the linked article. The news reporter, as part of her story, contacted Educational Fund to stop gun violence. Accidental shootings are one of the most common causes of death and kill nearly 500 people in the United States every year, according to the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence. Tam then goes on to say, what? So nearly 500 people are killed in the U.S. in firearms accidents, huh? We're going to talk about the 951 deaths attributed to contact with powered lawnmower. What about the 1,413 Americans snuffed by fall from tree, or more than 2,000 who die from failure to poop. And it goes on from there. I love Tamara Keel. She is a national treasure. Yeah, I think this means we're winning. The fact that we're down to 500 accidental deaths every year, and we've got millions and millions and millions of guns in the United States.
I believe the actual number is about in the mid 400s of all accidental deaths. 1 out of 350 are attributable to a fatal firearms injury. Mm-hmm. That means we got a lot of other things to worry about. This one is nowhere near the top.
It reminds me of a quote I heard, and I'm trying to remember who to attribute to. They were talking about gun control out of Canada during their last round of gun seizures up there, and they said, because of the long guns. Remember, they'd taken ARs and assault rifles was part of the last one there, and they said there had only been. The quote was something like that. There had only been 4 murders with a long gun there, and the counter to that was, yeah, but you had 8,000 accidental hunting deaths, with the same long gun. So what difference does it make if it was 4 murders or 8,000 long guns? It's the same firearm. If you either ban it or you don't ban it, you take it or you don't take it. Right. But don't lie about the numbers. And that was what the point the guy was trying to make, just like Tamara did here. That was a rather well smackdown, I think is what I would call it.
And now we can say all safe from constipation on our Facebook. Okay.
That's it. Hey, if you've ever had an MRE, you know what that like.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
The one point, one comparison I've seen, I think is a pretty good comparison, between people who have been pro-lockdown, over the course of the pandemic, and then also gun control advocates, is they monomaniacally focus on the harms caused by the virus and by people who use guns in bad ways, to the total exclusion of the benefits of a free society. Like how much benefit comes from an armed society, how much benefit comes from a society that's not locked down, right? I mean, they just monomaniacally focus on the harm from a singular cause and to the exclusion of all the benefits. And I think that that article really brings that out.
It's a pretty simple world when you ignore most of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Great, and I was wondering if this was going to come up, but I'm glad that Charlie Chambers did mention it. Far more children die each year in swimming pool accidents than in gun incidents. Absolutely true, and honestly, in car accidents.
Yeah.
Although that is getting better, and I'm glad it's getting better. There's a number of reasons that people are dying less from car accidents, but that is on the decline, just as firearm accidents are on the decline.
I'm going to go back to our earlier story in Indiana, because I was trying to quantify the benefits of constitutional carry, and I ran some numbers, came up with about 1,600 people who would be armed if constitutional carry passed, who would not be armed if it didn't pass. That's twice the number of people in Indiana who are killed on the Indiana roads each year. So now, and as you just pointed out, Paul, we have done great things. People wear seat belts. Thank you. People wear helmets. Thank you. Please don't stop. We've got kids now who go, look, I understand you've got your license, but it's dark, it's ugly weather, not tonight. Awesome, we're making those incremental improvements, and the lives we save are real. But imagine that we could save twice as many lives or people with serious bodily injury by leaving people alone so that they can protect themselves. No.
I listened to the House committee hearing on constitutional carry last week. It was a little over 3-hour hearing, and there were a number of law enforcement officers there who were there to testify for and against. There were officers on both sides of the issue. And the common objection is that without a licensing process, it would make the roadside stop more dangerous for officers and not as efficient, right? And that was a common objection, but to an officer, if they were asked if they had any data to support that position, none of them had any data to support that position at all.
Isn't that amazing? Huh?
Mike, go. You've been an officer. Go, dude.
It's just you listen. And I think Alex said it best. I'm not even going to jump on there. Isn't it amazing that because of the resume you wear on your chest, you get this in the military a lot, you get this in the law enforcement a lot. We'll just take them as we'll take it for granted that they know what they're talking about. We'll ask them to come up here and speak to this one of the most distinguished bodies in the country. And we ask them what their proof is. They go, well, I just don't have any. It's just how I feel. It's just how I feel.
Right.
Now you look like an idiot for bringing them before to testify, don't you? It's ridiculous when you see that, and that's always the answer, Alex. And I love that you call them out on it.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know. It was the same way last year, but they come back and say the same thing again, and still no data.
Well, yeah, because here I am. I'm the distinguished sheriff, the high sheriff of this county, right. And if I say so, I say so. And so right. I need you to trust me. I need you to trust me.
Exactly.
How about trust but verify? I've heard that before.
Well, I got a traffic ticket last year, and I'm sitting there with my hands up on the wheel. Hi, I'm carrying, and it goes, oh, well, thanks for telling me, but yeah, I don't care. Yeah, it's the only guys who notify me, of course, are the honest guys, so
yeah,
that's why I'm bladed and standing in this position as we talk. You go, right. Good point. Keep that up, will you? Because there are bad people in the world, and the cops run into them. Yeah.
Every time I've informed, I've been told a version of, you don't touch yours, I won't touch mine.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
It's a great deal. That's a great deal.
What's so bothersome to me about that sort of rationale or that sort of testimony is that they show up and they say, listen, without a licensing process, it would make my job more difficult, and it might make it less safe, but I have no data to support that. But they're saying it should be the burden of the citizen to prove that they can exercise their right and that they have a license. And it's like, no, the burden should be the other way, that the government should have to prove that I can't exercise my rights.
Exactly
and I think they just have the rationale completely reversed.
They do, and a lot of that goes back to generational instructions that we've been given from law enforcement and law enforcement agencies for years and years and years about guns, and guns are bad, because there was a time when we went to exposing nothing, no open carry anywhere, when it finally started to come back in states, and you've had to deal with it. I'm telling you, it's absolute, complete institutional difference between two states, Georgia and Florida. Neighbors forever, but because one's been an open carry state and one is not, the call of a man with a gun down here is the end of the world. And Georgia, it's ask him what kind it is. What's it for? It's the polar opposites. And it's going to take a generation of at least 10 years in every agency and every state to reverse that. And we've got guys in Florida working their butt off down here to do it. And you get some of them high sheriffs that, listen, you don't have to, I don't need stats, you just got to trust me. That's who you're fighting with every day to get the truth out there. But that's in everything we do, right?
Mike, you've been in law enforcement. Guessing you've pulled people over at a traffic stop. Within 30 seconds, pretty much know what's going on. You know if something's wrong, right? Before you even have gotten the driver's license in your hand, you've walked to the car, you know if something's wrong, right?
You just, with experience and training, you learn to detect those things. I'm not going to call it a gut instinct or anything like that. It's got nothing to do with that. It's looking at the individual cues that you're observing. You do the math in your head. It's easy to figure out. I'll say, Paul, I know within the first 10 seconds if there's a lawful firearm owner in the car, because they're trying to make my job easier. Even if they're not telling me. They got lights on, windows down, hands on the dash, even if it's in the daytime, and it's a respectful confrontation or respectful exchange, and you know what they usually get? they usually get a warning for thanking me, or thanking them for making my job and my life easier. Now, I will say, listen, an exception to that, probably Rob, you got them. If you get stopped by a trooper or you get stopped by somebody on a motorcycle, you're getting a ticket no matter what, even if you're the cop's mother. You're getting.
They're out there to raise money. Yeah.
Yeah.
All
Raise
right,
money
well,
through safety.
we have just blown past our hour allocation. So, gentlemen, let's do what we normally do at the end of the show. Go around the horn and start with you, Mike. You've got something coming up Monday night. Tell everybody about it.
Oh, well, listen, if you're in Las Vegas Monday night, come out to the Hofbrau House, 7 p.m. local. The Arms Room Radio and the Rundown hosting a party with sponsors Next Level Training, Grid Defense, Guerrilla Machining, Keltec Firearms, GunTech USA. I'm probably forgetting some others. We're going to have a great time. Come on out. Prizes, free beverages, free prizes. It's going to be a good time. Monday night, 7 p.m. Vegas. And you don't have to have SHOT Show credentials to get in. Just come out to Hofbrau House and then hang out with us. Hope to see several hundred of my closest friends and family out there.
And as I did last time we were on the air together, I'm going to warn everybody that's watching now or everybody's catching this on podcast, if you're going, bring your hearing protection. It tends to get loud there. I was there a few years ago. This polka band they bring, wow, holy cow. Yeah. Anyway, Rob, what do you want to promote?
I host the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast. Tomorrow night,
Whoops! I'll get the right damn button here sooner or later.
Thank goodness it wasn't the red button and you didn't launch the missiles. I co-host with Paul on the Polite Society podcast. My blog is at slowfacts.wordpress.com, and from there it's picked up at Ammoland, where I get to write the Armed Citizens column. Alec, where can we find you?
So actually, we were talking about constitutional carry in Indiana. There's going to be a hearing in the Senate on Wednesday, January the 19th at 1:30. It's going to be for Senate Bill 14, which is Senator Liz Brown's bill, the one that is constitutional carry if you're 21 or older. So it's obviously not perfect, but they're going to have a hearing on it and if you're from Indiana, or even if you're not, and you want to see what that hearing's like, it will be live broadcast on the Indiana General Assembly's website, and you can attend at the State House if you're from Indiana and want to speak in support of it. Love to see you there. Hopefully, I can be there as well. That's Wednesday at 1:30, January the 19th. So if you haven't contacted your state rep already, make sure you let them know that they should support constitutional carry for every eligible adult 18 or older, and we can make some progress for our individual liberty and our firearms rights. So that's the big news for me this week.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me, and thank you everybody who watched live and commented, and thank you for everybody who's listening on podcast. And if you are listening on podcast, please do subscribe if you happen to just stumble upon the podcast. And for those of you who are watching on video, please do subscribe to the podcast as well. You can catch it whenever you want to, not just if you happen to catch us while we are live. That's going to do it for this week. Thanks, everybody, and catch us next week.